Let's get started. You will need about 10 sheets of wafer paper, a pair of scissors, a plate or anything round that fits your wafer paper, a spray bottle with vodka in it, or Everclear or rose spirit, whatever alcohol you like to use, and some gold lustre dust of your choice. It's even better if you have several different shades of gold. Have a small amount of alcohol in your dish for making some gold paint with the lustre dust. You will need this later. I'm going to start by making the roses. You can make as many roses as you like, but you will need a sheet of wafer paper for each one. Now lightly draw a circle around your plate onto your wafer paper, or you can do this freehand if you like. Cut out the circle just inside the line. Put the larger scraps to one side for your ruffles later, and keep the smaller scraps in a plastic snap-lock bag. They can be useful for all sorts of things. Small flowers, cake velvet, wafer paper glue, you name it. There's lots of uses. Come in on a narrow angle with your scissors to begin cutting your spiral. Then widen out to about 2 or 3 centimetres and continue following the circle around until you get to the centre. You could draw the spiral in first if you're not comfortable doing it freehand. You need to leave a circular area in the middle to form the base of your rose. Now I'm going to roll up the spiral from the outside all the way into the middle. I like to start off by rolling around the end of my paintbrush. I'd like to assure you that my hands are well washed. They're just stained with food colouring from a project I did earlier on today. Keep rolling till you get right to the central circle, and then give it a good spray with some of your vodka. Now stick the base of the spiral down onto that wet circle and hold it there. Let it splay out a bit into a rose shape. Now make sure the whole bottom edge of that spiral is sticking down well to the vodka soaked base circle. Hold it in place for a while. Stick the edges down a little. Continue doing this for as many roses as you like. For one of these, I've made my spiral cut slightly wavy. You will need to leave these to dry for at least half an hour. When the bottom of the rose is dry, give the top of it a very light spritz with your alcohol. This will give the petals a bit of curve and movement. Now I'm going to start covering my cake with ruffles. For the purpose of this video, I'm just using a polystyrene cake dummy. If I was using a cake, I would have it covered in fondant and left for a few hours to harden. Now the fondant finish isn't that important because none of it's going to get seen. It's just there as a base to stick the wafer paper on. You need to slightly dampen the surface of your fondant covered cake with a little brushed on or sprayed on water. Because I'm using a dummy, I'm using some edible glue. You could do that with fondant also. Wrap the wafer paper around and then tear down the overlap till it's just about 3 or 4 centimetres above the height of the cake. Wafer paper tears nicely along its length, and which makes this very easy, but if you're tearing it along its width, it will be a jagged tear. Now you have a collar. Divide it into 4 or 5 sections by tearing downwards towards the cake, and then spritz it liberally with your alcohol. The alcohol makes the wafer paper curl and warp, and this will form your first frill. Now take 2 sheets of wafer paper and tear each one into about 5 strips of slightly uneven width. Taking the first strip, start rolling it around your finger and then just roll it all up and place it into the very centre of your cake, which is slightly dampened. Stick it down onto the fondant. I'm sticking mine onto wafer paper. Give it a bit of a spritz with your vodka and hold it there till it doesn't move. Secure the end back onto the roll with another spray of vodka. Now each subsequent strip of wafer paper you're going to roll slightly looser than the one before it, forming this rose formation, until you get to the outside where the rolls are nearly as wide as the cake itself. Each time stick the ends in with a bit of vodka so that you get that unfurling petal effect. Fill in any gaps that seem a bit too wide with extra strips of wafer paper. This is where the scraps from your roses come in handy. Now doesn't that look pretty? And pretty easy too. You can choose to paint the edges in gold now or just do all the gold edging at the end. I did mine to start with because I love painting in gold and I wanted to see how it would look. You need your gold lustre and your vodka mixture to be fairly creamy. It doesn't want to be super runny. Just run your brush along the edge of the paper. Now for the side frills, work 1 or 2 sheets of wafer paper at a time. Tear them into strips as before, but this time tear the corners off so that each strip is tapered on both ends. Spray these strips with a light spritz of vodka until you just see them just start to curl and warp. Now you can leave these for a while to dry naturally, or you can speed the process up by using a hairdryer. You want them to be dry enough so that they lift up off your mat, but not so dry that they crack when you handle them. Now I'm lying my cake dummy down on the mat so that you can see what I'm doing, but obviously if it's a real cake you'd be working upright and preferably on a turntable to make life easier. So you're going to work down from the top, attaching each piece of semi-dried wafer paper to the fondant. It should stick fairly easily, if not just give the fondant a bit of a spray, and work round and round, spiral your way down, sticking the bottom edge of each strip to the cake and leaving the top edge free, so that that will naturally come out and away from the cake and form a frill. You don't have to be precise or careful with this, you just have to play with it until you like the way it looks. If the paper's gone a bit brittle before you've positioned it the way you like it, you can just give it another little spritz and it'll be flexible again. Fill any gaps you don't like with extra little strips. And at this stage you can do the edges with the gold paint and just leave your cake white and gold if that's the look you're going for, which is quite pretty. Okay, so I went ahead and started brushing gold lustre on the cake, and as soon as I started I knew that I wasn't going to be happy with that. So I've got my Sweet Sticks Metallics palette. These are all water-based. Just wet them. A little bit of water, here we go. And you're ready to go. And you can make it as wet or as dry as you like. In this case, I don't want it too wet because I don't want the wafer paper to start disintegrating. I'm going to start with some of the dark gold. It's a lovely, rich, coppery colour. And I'm going to take it down the bottom. Of course, if you don't have a Sweet Sticks palette or anything like that, you can dry dust with your various shades of gold lustres and get the same effect that way. Just use a similar sized brush to this. Not one of the big fluffy ones that I made the mistake of using. So I'm accentuating each frill by painting in darker at the bottom to form a shadow, and then taking it up lighter towards the top of each individual frill. I'm using more watered down paint to make mine lighter, but if you're just using dusts, then you just don't apply quite so much. You can use all one shade of gold, or if you do have several different shades, you can alternate them or just use them in a random pattern. At this point it all looks a little bit messy and disjointed, but you just keep working that colour up, almost an ombre effect on each frill. Just work back into it until you're happy with the gradation of colour. Now you can stick on as many or as few of your wafer paper roses as you like. You can stick them on with piping gel or edible glue or royal icing or even a dab of isomalt, or you can make some wafer paper glue out of offcuts of wafer paper mixed with water and left overnight to soak. The wafer paper dissolves into a gluey paste. And there you have it, in all its golden frills and ruffles.